Hello everyone. Today I'm going to do a review of the album Chromatic Grammatic by Lydian Nadhaswaram. So who is Lydian Nadhaswaram? If you know who Lydian Nadhaswaram is, you would be asking, how do you not know? But anyway, here's a quick background of Lydian Nadhaswaram. Lydian Nadhaswaram is a 16-year-old young boy from Tamil Nadu. He was actually given a musical name by his father Varshan, who is himself a music director in Tamil film music. Lydian is nothing but the name of a mode in Western music, and Nadhaswaram is a South Indian wind instrument. Lydian has already received lessons in music from none other than Ilayaraja. He has also studied music in Rahman's conservatory, and that's apart from many other mentors. In fact, if you were following the build-up to the release of this album, you would have seen that many people associated with not only the South Indian music industry, but even others like Louis Banks were leaving best wishes messages and promoting the album for Lydian. So how often do you think that happens, especially for someone who is just 16? Well, in this case, there is a very good reason, because Lydian in 2019, when he was just 13, appeared in a TV reality show called World's Best, which I think appears on CBS. And in that show, he played Flight of the Bumblebee at twice the average speed. He played the piano blindfolded. He even played two compositions simultaneously on two different pianos. And naturally, he won the first prize in that contest, and I believe the prize money was $1 million. And apart from that, he can actually play drums, tabla, he can play the trumpet, he can play guitar, bass guitar. He can also play an instrument called harpeggi, which is a new instrument relatively speaking, and which Rahman gifted to him. No, how many times do you think that happens? Right, so basically Lydian is a kind of a cherished and coveted teenage prodigy of India, and naturally when the news came out that Lydian is coming out with his own album, expectations were super high. And at the same time, when I learned that the title of the album is Chromatic Grammatic, I was just a little bit apprehensive, because that name sounded a little gimmicky to me. At the same time, I have to also balance that by thinking about the fact that he's still 16. He's allowed to have fun. He doesn't have to be so adult and boring and proper, right? So I said, okay, let's just keep an open mind and go into it. And after all, he has shown plentiful evidence of his talent. That's just one thing that you simply cannot question. So anyway, and there was a little bit of amateur hour going on even with the launch and the release. There was a private launch on World Music Day, which I think was on June 21st. And we thought that the album is going to come out on the same day or soon after, but there was radio silence for the next few days. And then Lydian's father did a video announcing that the album is going to come on July 12th. So I didn't understand the point of that. Why to announce that the album is going to be launched if it was only going to be a private launch? But anyway, finally the album did drop in. It's on YouTube Music and Spotify, and I think it's also on iTunes, but I'm not an Apple guy, so I wouldn't know. And again, I have to say that we are 5 days from the day on which the album was made available, and at least I still can't find the credits anywhere. And I just don't want to see the credits only to find out who all have played on the album, and I'll be coming to that, but also what instruments Lydian himself has played, because he's just this incredible, unbelievable multi-instrumentalist. And you can't even find out on which track what instruments Lydian has played. I mean, I know I sound impatient, but this is normally taken for granted when a new album is launched. And it's probably because the trio, there's Varshan the father, and there is Lydian's sister Amrita Varshini, and Lydian himself, and the three of them are obsessed with music 24/7. They eat, sleep, drink music. So probably they don't think so much about the other aspects to do with marketing the music, at least probably as much as they should. So again, I'm giving them benefit of doubt, and I hope that the credits will be available pretty soon. 2 songs, or rather 2 tracks I should say, because it's an all instrumental album. 2 tracks have also been uploaded in video form on Lydian's YouTube channel. So with that in mind, let's get to the album, let's get to my thoughts on that. And to give you some background about me, what my tastes are, well, of course, I, as an Indian, do listen to plenty of film music and also a little bit of Carnatic and Hindustani, but I'm also very, very engaged in Western music, especially rock, jazz, a little bit of Western classical as well. I just recently attended a jazz gig where Prasanna played one act, and then there was another act performed by a Dutch band. So I have been seriously interested in jazz for quite a long time, at least 10 years, which when you consider that I am 36 is a lot. Anyway, so in spite of the fact that I have listened to jazz done by Miles Davis, John Coltrane, or even the musician who was associated with Miles Davis for many years, Freddie Hubbard, many others, Charles Mingus, I could go on, Sonny Rollins. I've heard all their albums, and I still have to say that Lydian has come out with an excellent effort. I would not necessarily go all the way to calling it an incredible or unprecedented masterpiece, and probably that is a little difficult to achieve now because jazz is almost 100 years old, and even the prime, you could say, bop, cool jazz and modal jazz phase is now 50 years away. It all went by in the 60s. So there's been so much ground that's been covered in jazz that it's probably a little difficult at this stage to just completely break new ground. But even so, Lydian does manage to impress, and especially so when you consider that he's just 16. Look, I know that he already plays all these instruments and he's incredibly talented, but that's mechanical ability to some extent. He's also shown, in my opinion, on this album that he has, to a large degree, an original voice as a composer, and that's just incredible, especially when you consider that this is a jazz album. The album is consistently of a very high quality. There is not a single track that has nothing interesting going on it. If nothing else, there are at least 1 or 2 good solos in each and every track. And one thing that really impressed me is that Lydian didn't try to talk down to the audience or try to pander to the lowest common denominator. In fact, there is a track called Cherry which has nothing but Lydian on the piano. That's it. There's no drums. So that's a very big risk if you consider that many of his followers on YouTube may not actually be that much into jazz. They were probably drawn in by the videos of Lydian performing at World's Best, or the many videos that Lydian has done covering Ilayaraja compositions. For me, like a jazz head like me, a track that's nothing but piano is actually kind of like heaven, but that's not necessarily going to be how everybody looks at it. So in my opinion, he took a big risk, but it pays off because Cherry is one of the best tracks on the album. My absolute favorite track on the album is the opening track, Kickoff. It has wonderful piano again by Lydian, although this track also has bass and drums. I would say the drums don't necessarily go into full-on traditional jazz kind of drumming territory for the most part. It's a little more like fusion kind of drumming, or maybe think Steely Dan. You know, it's powerful, but at the same time, it's kind of a light touch. It doesn't overpower the music. So the tracks Kick Off, Cherry, and Rugged, these are pure jazz tracks. When I say pure jazz, I mean that there isn't even much, in fact no fusion going on in them, and I found them to be the strongest tracks on the album. And I'm not saying this because I don't like fusion. I do like fusion. I in fact saw Shakti live, that was back in 2012, and instantly, very soon after that, maybe a few months or a year after that, U Srinivas died. So if you turned up for that show, you really got to see something which you would not again. But anyway, so it's not that I dislike fusion, but I just felt that in the pure jazz format, Lydian was able to show more of what he can do harmonically, how he can improvise, how he can explore different possibilities. In the fusion tracks, he gets a little bit constrained, because he has to make space for trade-offs for the other players' solos. But what kind of players? So Sparkplug has some incredible electric veena played by Rajesh Vaidya. Now again, those of you who are familiar with what goes on in Tamil music, and especially if you've watched certain Tamil serials, you know very well who Rajesh Vaidya is. But still, I assure you that you would not be able to believe that all this was possible on the electric veena by Rajesh Vaidya. He plays it pretty much like guitar, and not just any guitar, but kind of like rock, like angry guitar playing, and that was just amazing. In fact, I heard the audio of the album first on YouTube Music, and a couple of days later the video of Sparkplug drops in on Lydian's YouTube page, and then I see, what's Rajesh Vaidya doing here? Because I thought that I was listening to guitar, and it turns out to be electric veena, so I was just absolutely blown away. And then there is this other track called Spot, which I think has Frank Gambale. Again, remember I said you don't yet have the credits for this album, but I think I can hear Frank Gambale's trademark sweep picking on that track. So I think it's him, and Spot again is a really good track. There are three that I'm not so hot on. One is Beam Up, then the other is Breeze, the third one is Breather. Is that something that I don't like about the alphabet B? I don't know. But basically the real reason is that they all lean towards smooth jazz. But again, they all have something interesting, especially the solos, so they do keep you engaged. It's just that I, as a greedy jazz head, would have liked to hear more like Kick Off and Rugged on just each and every track. I wouldn't complain, but I do understand he is, on the one hand, he's hedging his bets a little bit, give something for everyone and not just the hardcore jazz listeners, which is a much smaller subset. And there's nothing wrong with that if what you're doing in terms of fusion or smooth jazz is still interesting. And on the other hand, Lydian is also, in my opinion, making a statement. This album is a statement album. Lydian is showing us what he can already do as a composer in a jazz framework, and that's important. Again, remember, he has been mentored by Ilayaraja and Rahman. Now they made their name as composers, so Lydian is kind of the next step. He's not just going to be a world-class composer. I really don't know if he will be as creative as Ilayaraja or Rahman. Probably you would lean on that being the case eventually, but it's a very, very tall order. But what we can say for sure is that he's a world-class performer already. He's a world-class performer of Western music, so he's, in a sense, beating them at their own game. So that hasn't happened before. We have had great players, but they usually operated purely within an Indian framework. Lydian is going all out with a Western jazz album. There are in fact only two tracks which even have Indian elements. They are Beam Up and Breeze, and even in those tracks the Indian elements are very very restrained. He doesn't really go into all out Indo-Western synthesis at all. So again, that's what really impressed me, that he's ready to go there, take that risk, stay in a Western space, and at the same time not just try to imitate whoever that's hot in the US or UK is doing, but do something that really has the stamp of Lydian Nadhaswaram. So to sum up, I would say that it's a wonderful, wonderful debut. In spite of my high expectations, I'm impressed. Probably in the very initial listens, I wasn't completely blown away, but I gave it time. After 5 or 6 listens through the album, then I really began to see the depth of Lydian's composing and also his playing. It's not just pure virtuosity in terms of speed, but he's very expressive and creative. He takes risks. So that's really, in a jazz sense, that makes it even greater. So I can only say that you too, if you're giving the album a go, ought to give it a little bit of time. This is not your regular film music or pop music. Jazz takes a little bit of time to digest and absorb, and to start seeing the different nuances in each composition. And when you do, then I think you will also agree with me. So I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you would like me to review other albums, please do tell me which ones, and I'll give it a shot. Bye.